Oh, our team, there's going to be more guys added. Competitors welcomed. Any country, any state, any team, competitors welcomed.
The most exciting position battle as we get closer to training camp is the battle for the cornerback spots on this team. And yes, I do mean multiple cornerback spots because the only sure thing right now that we have at corner is Asante Samuel Jr. But even his future, honestly, with this team is uncertain. And we'll get into why later. But the nickel and the CB1 spots are wide open right now. And there's a lot of competition with guys that are young and hungry and have a ton of potential. Let me give you the full breakdown on the most exciting training camp battle on the Chargers roster. So the Chargers entered this offseason with maybe the worst secondary in the NFL. There are tons of stats out there that show how terrible that pass defense was with Brandon Staley these last few seasons and how many points they gave up while Justin Herbert was putting up crazy stats, and even Justin Herbert couldn't keep up with the amount of yards and points that this Chargers defense was giving up, even though he has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, both stat-wise and film-wise, over that course of the Brandon Staley era. Now, there are only 3 cornerbacks from the Brandon Staley era that I would expect to be able to make the Chargers roster this year. Those guys are Asante Samuel Jr., obviously, Ja'Sir Taylor, and Deane Leonard. Now, none of them are particularly good, although each one of them did flash some good plays last year, and they're all still 25 years old. So honestly, I would not count any of them out, especially Asante Samuel Jr., because he has been the best of those 3 guys consistently. But again, we have to keep in mind, we are talking about the pass defense that gave up the second most passing yards in the NFL while having some pretty good pass rushers like Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, and then Joey Bosa for like almost half the season. Even though the Chargers had the 7th most sacks in the NFL with 48, the back end of this defense, they still struggled a ton. And I do think that a lot of that has to fall on Brandon Staley because the cornerbacks, like, they were playing almost 10 yards off for most of the year, and he wouldn't put players in position to succeed as much as we all anticipated because, you know, he's a defensive guru and all. But his defense was also notoriously complex and the hardest for the defensive backs to understand. So that needs to be taken into account when we go back in this past season and look at all of these blown coverages. But now that we have Jesse Minter, who takes pride in keeping his scheme simple to understand and difficult to game plan against, I'm going to be eager to see how it affects those 3 cornerbacks on our roster right now, even though I do think that Ja'Sir Taylor and Deane Leonard might be on the roster bubble. And the reason for that is they drafted 2 cornerbacks in the draft this year, and even though, yeah, I know they were only in the 5th round, I would still expect those guys to push for playing time like pretty early. Tarheeb Still out of Maryland, he's got the size and the speed that you want at that nickel spot while also being one of the best cornerbacks versus the run in all of college football last year. And Tarheeb is also an extremely fluid mover who doesn't lose speed when he is changing direction, and all of those traits project him to be a very solid nickel cornerback for us. Whether he comes in year 1 and starts is the question, but he's going to have to beat out Ja'Sir Taylor for that job. And there are also some really interesting undrafted free agents to keep an eye on for that nickel job, and they might push Ja'Sir Taylor off the roster because I am a huge fan of Thomas Harper from Notre Dame. That dude is feisty and he plays hard. Plus, the Notre Dame defensive back coach, Chris O'Leary, he is the Chargers safety coach, so he's already got one fan on the Chargers coaching staff. And then you look at Robert Kennedy from NC State. That's another name to look out for because even though he might be running for president, he also plays with bad intentions on the football field. And he has a knack for getting his hands on the ball with both fumbles and interceptions. Both of these undrafted free agents, they are inconsistent tacklers and they are both undersized, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see either of them jump Ja'Sir Taylor on this roster and make the team. And they could really surprise some people because both of these guys had some flashes of really, really good tape, even though they both do have flaws, but you know, we all have flaws. Like my biggest flaw is that I suck at fantasy football, but I still play on Underdog Fantasy because it is so fun. If you click on my link in the description and enter my code McLean, that is MACLAIN, McLellan. You will get a special pick'em and a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Stock up for the football season, or maybe you like to play fantasy baseball, you can stock up for that. This is the best way to support me, and I thank every single one of you that uses my code. I greatly appreciate it, just like I appreciate Cam Hart, because he's the other 5th-round cornerback that we took, and the Chargers, they may have gotten a day 3 sleeper with Cam Hart, because he is the most natural cornerback one on the Chargers roster right now. He has all of the physical tools and traits to succeed at the NFL level, but he just needs to stay healthy. That's why he fell so far in the draft. He is 6'3", 200 pounds, and elite explosiveness with great route anticipation and physicality. He comes downfield fast in zone coverage, and he has pretty good run defense. If he can stay healthy, he might be the best cornerback on the Chargers roster right now, honestly, and he could be starting on the boundary from day 1. But Kristian Fulton is the other cornerback that can play on the boundary, and the Chargers signed him on a 1-year flyer in free agency because he flashed some really good play in the NFL, but he also has the size and athleticism that you want, so the Chargers are giving him another shot at success. Kristian Fulton, he has had some really good reps in the NFL at only 26 years old, but he has also played very poorly too and struggled with injuries on top of that. Then you look at Deane Leonard, 6'1", 200 pounds, and he has struggled so far in his career. There's no doubt about that, but the team needs depth badly, and he does have the size to play on the outside. I just think, I don't think he's as good as Cam Hart or Kristian Fulton at this point. And if those guys can play well and stay healthy, that might make Deane Leonard expendable. And if Tarheeb Still, on top of that, if he can play well on the outside as well as the nickel spot, then we might see Deane Leonard on the practice squad. And it's going to be interesting to see if either Kristian Fulton or Cam Hart can stay healthy. And if they do, who's going to outperform the other and take that cornerback 1 spot. And now I want to talk about Asante Samuel Jr. because his future is very interesting. All right. He's going to be 26 years old. He has been inconsistent. He doesn't have great size. Plus, he allowed more yards per reception than Michael Davis and more yards than Kenneth Murray on 1 less catch allowed this past season. He was the best cornerback for us last year, and I don't think that's very close, but we're talking about guys that are on the bubble right now in Deane Leonard and Ja'Sir Taylor because we drafted 2 5th-round cornerbacks this season. Like I said, that room was one of the worst in the NFL last season and nobody was particularly good. Asante has not been extended yet, and this is the final year of his contract. And the Chargers, they are in position to let him walk in free agency for a comp pick in the future while also getting younger and bigger at that cornerback spot. I think that Asante might be the first real casualty that we see of this comp pick factory that Joe Ortiz is wanting to create. I know a lot of fans like him a lot. I still like him. He has been solid, but this year it's going to determine whether they value him highly enough to pay his second contract. I'm not so sure that they will, but I think it's going to depend on how well he plays this season, and then also how well those other cornerbacks that we added to this roster this offseason, how well those guys play. Because if some of those guys come in and play well, then we're going to have the flexibility to allow Asante to walk, and then we're going to get cheaper at that cornerback position while also getting younger and having better size and also getting a comp pick later on. And that is why the cornerback battle is so interesting and important this year. It not only determines who is going to be on the final 53-man roster and who will be starting, but it also has future implications for the guys that are on our team right now. Will Ja'Sir Taylor make this roster with the added competition of Tarheeb Still, Thomas Harper, and Robert Kennedy? Will Cam Hart prove that he was a steal in the draft by staying healthy and competing in year 1? And will this be the last season that the Chargers have Asante Samuel Jr.? We will know more of what to expect once we get into training camp, but if you want to know what to expect from Jim Harbaugh in year 1, then you can click this video right here.